Hi, I'm David Cochran, Dean of the School of Business and Technology at Newman University. And with me today is John King. He is Senior Manager 2 over Analytics and Insights for Private Brands at Walmart. John is one of several outstanding adjunct instructors teaching in our Masters of Data Science program here at Newman. And I recruited him to do this partly after talking with him about his passion for working with data to model it for the analytical workflow. And so as a result, John teaches our data warehousing course and does a fantastic job, and he brings a world of experience from a major company, right, as he does this. So, John, again, I want to tell you we're glad to have you as one of our adjunct professors, and thanks for being willing to talk with me today.
Yeah, happy to join. David, thank you again for introducing me. I'm John King. David and I have been working together for about a year and a half now, developing curriculum for this data warehousing course. And we've been through two cohorts, and we're planning for another one in October. So we're looking forward to that.
So John, tell us about your role and what you do at Walmart.
Yeah, so right now I represent Walmart's private brands. And I do analytics and build dashboards to inform decision making for that process. So for those that aren't super familiar with the retail industry, it's all about individual products, bringing those to shelves, making them available online. And so the team that I support develops products in-house, sources those throughout the world, brings them through the supply chain, and makes them available to customers at unbelievable prices. So that's what we do, and that's the group that I support directly. And moving forward, actually starting Monday, I will be supporting not just the private brands, but an assortment analytics role for the total general merchandise business for Walmart. So I'm excited to start that, and I'll keep you informed on how that's going.
Awesome. Well, congrats on the new role.
Thank you.
All right. So everybody that I've talked with usually has kind of an interesting story about how they got into analytics. Often it's not a direct path. I think today, right, for many people, they can start out directly in data analytics or data science, but that's not been the case for very many years, right? And so how did you first fall into data analytics?
Yeah, so it's funny. Actually, I was in an undergraduate class at the University of Kansas, sorry,
Mhm.
and I was learning remote sensing, which is satellites and airplanes and the imagery and data content they capture. And someone came to that class and was introducing a open position for a research role for what's called the Center for Remote Sensing of Ice Sheets. So detecting ice sheet changes, additions, subtractions, and fluctuations in Antarctica, Greenland, and other parts of the polar caps. And so I jumped, I applied, and I was one of three that applied, and I got the job. So that's how I got my start into capturing data, synthesizing it, making decisions and presentations with it. So I did that for about 3 years, and that parlayed once I graduated into a role with the renewable energy uh, project developer. We're building or siting solar and wind farms. Did that for about 7 or 8 years, built applications on top of a GIS platform, finished my master's, and then moved on to a role within Walmart as part of their real estate strategy. So again, site selection, looking at how customers navigate store environment using GPS breadcrumbs from handheld devices. Did that for about a year and a half, and then moved into the core business of Walmart, which is merchandising. That is my role now, and I've been doing this for about 3.5 years. So that's the story. You're right; it is somewhat unusual to begin analytics from a kind of the beginning. However, I've always liked numbers. I've liked math. I like science, and I couldn't really stay focused. And I'm not a great reader of things like fiction, and so nonfiction really held my attention. And I
Mhm.
can read through things and consume, finance textbooks or how to build databases and things like that. So my brain was just tuned for it.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
awesome. So, it's fair to say I think that are you working much with GIS data now?
So not so yes, GIS data, but not
Hmm.
so much the GIS applications that
Hmm.
I cut my teeth on.
Hmm.
But there are definitely applications within Walmart that are using the GIS data. We do have some strategic questions around the country of origin that we source our products from, and to make sure that that's balanced and make sure that fits what our long-term trajectory looks like.
Hmm.
But that's not my responsibility directly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things I'm listening for is this working with data, is has a lot of similarities from role to role, and the specific kinds of data you work with could change pretty drastically over time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is. I would counter that with um, even though those sort of data types change, there's a pretty tight box around the types of data that you will encounter.
Mhm.
Some of the specialty information or data that I've um, really focused on is GPS, GIS data, which has a location aspect, which is really what I was learning. But today, rather than a space component, I'm looking at a time component. So sales over time, returns over time, um, um, inventory turns, looking at aging inventory. So the time component really replaced that geographic complexity that I was dealing with prior.
Yeah, that's well put. So, John, what is it that you most enjoy about your work?
I really like working with people, and what I think the data and analytics uh, expertise that I bring to the table does is it helps us move with speed and clarity. And so when we're trying to one scope out a problem or figure out um, how to address a particular issue, a lot of times teams that are non-technical or teams that don't use data to inform those decisions, they'll languish. They'll continuously get stuck in sort of what should we do mode. I like to say, okay, well, here's our options, put several on the table. And that takes timelines from months to weeks to days sometimes. And it means that we can move with speed and we can do things at scale and make decisions with confidence. That's what I like about it.
So the data helps you get some realistic options on the table.
That's right.
Yeah, cool. So, like, it's interesting. So, we're talking about data analytics and data science, and you might think of somebody who's pretty nerdy and kind of operates in the background, right? But in fact, it seems like a lot of data roles involve lots of communication. Um, and and yet, also, there time spent where you're able to kind of hunker down and work on a problem and then bring what you found or developed out, right, to then work with people. And so there's some time spent, you're developing this analysis, which is its thing. It's you and it for a while, right? And then you come out and are working with people. Is that, what's your balance, would you say, between like
I,
you and your data and you and other people?
I think that's a good question. I think it also depends on experience levels. So
Hmm.
in the early days, just to be very clear, it was 90-10. I was working with data 90% of the time, just getting to the answers. Um, and a lot of that just was I didn't know which way I was going. I had to learn. However, over time, that shifted to today. I probably spend 30% of my time with data, 70% of my time making sure I'm communicating with stakeholders, getting requirements, validating those requirements, making proposals, and iterating on that. I still do some very technical things that you just have to do the legwork. Things like building data dictionaries and understanding um, data pipelines, and if there's something wrong in those data pipelines, being able to communicate that upstream to technical folks. So that you kind of have to wear a lot of hats, but with that experience, what'll happen is you'll develop this confidence of knowing who to talk to about what. And obviously that's different at different organizations. However, Walmart over time has built a pretty serious data culture. And so I've been able to leverage that throughout my last probably 4 years or 5 years. However, when I was working in energy before, it was also a very data forward, very analytics forward business for a different reason. We were doing several very large projects that had huge implications. We couldn't get one, wrong. We had to, everything had to land correctly. Where Walmart, there's a lot of leeway to get a few things wrong and trial and error because you're selling tons of really small things. And so looking at just the contrast between those two, selling a $500 million energy project versus a, $5 replacement remote control. It's very different.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So 70-30 now, higher proportion spent on you and the data earlier. I'm going to reflect out loud for a minute and ask you to reply to this. I've noticed that students who tend to be slightly more extroverted with maybe like 30%, 40% introversion, somewhere on that spectrum between introvert and extrovert. So the slightly more extrovert kind does really well because they're game to go out and work with people to figure out what this means, how it's relevant to the business, etc. But then also my more introverted person, and I'm an introvert, right? I love to have a project that I can really hunker down on. But the more introverted graduate who can also prosper because what I find that they get to work on something. And so then when they go engage with people, they have something important to talk about. Does that make sense? It's not just shooting the breeze. I mean, I've got something here that's of real importance and relevance. And as long as I've got that, right, I'm quite introverted, but if we've got something important to talk about, it's actually really enjoyable and fun.
I would say that's a good point. And the something that I would point out that's within what you're saying is if you understand what basically who makes decisions and you understand what their needs are or potential needs are, and you try to serve those, you can be very introverted and spend a lot of time hunkering down doing analytical work. As long as you surface with answers to questions that they have, you'll go a long way. I over time have become more extroverted simply because I enjoy working with people and I've kind of gained experience and confidence. But you can make a big impact being pretty introverted. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of my peers are very introverted in the data space, and they do just fine.
Yeah. That's kind of fun. So the interesting thing about these roles is they involve some creativity along with the technical capability, right? They involve some introversion. They get you involved working with people because you have to, right? And so it's kind of an interesting blend of activity that you get to be involved in these roles. Cool. So you teach data warehousing, and a key part of that is, in the progress of the curriculum, and we've talked about the fact that we've really built our curriculum to serve the needs of what real people are doing today in the workplace, right? And so through feedback from our employers who love our students, right, we've really been shaping our curriculum to really match the current needs in the market. And so this progression that you're a part of with your data warehousing course kind of goes from this understanding relational databases first, and then the wider world of databases and some SQL, right? Writing queries to get the data we need out of the databases. But then you're that next step. Your course kind of fits in here where once we've got the data, right, we have to pull it out and bring it together and integrate it in such a way that it's ready for analysis, ready for machine learning, ready for, whatever purpose. But when we first met, right, you were just like, you got to have data modeling in this process. And it was obvious, right? And I needed you to kind of spur that on. And then the feedback from the other employers was 100% yes, we need that. So tell us about the process that you went through, kind of discovering the importance of intentionally modeling data for analysis.
Yeah, this was definitely an evolution. And I'll just take you back to the early days. When I first started, a lot of the data modeling, the things you would typically do with SQL in a database, I was doing with Python. I was using Python, I was using pandas. I was doing a lot of this work in memory. And basically what happened was over a period of 2 or 3 years, I was just forced to find better tools to solve those problems. I was just doing database work on my PC basically, which didn't work. And I just happened to be surrounded by a couple of colleagues when I was working in energy that did understand what databases were good at. They did understand the strengths that they brought, the things you could do with them that were scalable, that were repeatable. And so I learned through them what could be done with data modeling in SQL. In particular, there were two gentlemen that did this for me. One had come from the healthcare sector, and he had worked for a company that was a serial acquirer of hospital networks. And he was integrating payment systems from multiple different, as well as other systems from multiple different hospital networks. And so I got to look over his shoulder as he built an application for the energy company I was working for that was serving up as a dashboard to review the projects that we were working on. And so you bring in business ideas, you bring in project management ideas, you bring in financial ideas, and he was on the back end making that all work. And what was he using? He was using a database, SQL Server, and leveraging Kimball's data methods. And so I asked him, I said, Tyler, what is it that you're doing here? And he says, well, if you really want to know, you should go look at Ralph Kimball and Margie Ross's work. You should read the whole book. You should look at their website. They've got a ton of content for free on their website as a blog. They've accumulated over, I think, like 25 or 30 years of consulting work with all kinds of different companies in different industries. So yeah, that's how I came to it, was more a stroke of luck than anything. But that's kind of why I'm here, is to pass that knowledge forward one student at a time through Newman and through teaching data modeling to the next generation of analysts.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm so glad we ran across each other because, today we know that this data needs to be pulled from its original sources into like a data warehouse or a lake house or, and the tools are so much more available. But, Kimball's methods, you found one of the best ways to do this, right? And so we now are able to talk about fact tables and dimension tables, and it just speeds up the process of making data available, right? So it's really useful and we can get insights out of it so much more quickly. So, I'm proud of our curriculum. I'm proud that we get to include an introduction to data engineering and have that track, and your role in that's so huge. The cool thing is now we live in this day where more and more people are starting out in analytics, right? I've got undergraduates who are starting out, they're data analysts from day one, and that's what they studied, business data analytics. And then we've got our Masters of Data Science students, and they move into a data engineering or a machine learning role. And so it's kind of a fun new day, right? When now we've got education able to match up with the roles that are out there. But I mean,
want to comment on
yeah,
that.
yeah, jump on that, yeah.
When I'm at work, the laptop that sits on my desk is more powerful than the entire server room that I was using when I was doing research in undergrad. 2 times more powerful, and it costs way less. So if you just extrapolate that, bring that to sort of cloud architecture, what's at our fingertips is exponentially more powerful than what we had even a decade ago. It's pretty astounding. And so you can start with just a laptop and really do a lot of heavy lifting. Really anybody anywhere in the world can do that.
Yeah. That's cool, right? But one of the things too, and the things that we were asked to do was then move into a cloud environment. So now, in our later parts of our curriculum, we're moving to the Azure cloud. And part of that is so that we're familiar with utilizing, larger resources for larger data sets. And one of the things that's so fascinating talking with you is you get a chance to work with quite large data sets, don't you?
Oh, yes. I get, so large that I'll get emails on a daily basis saying, hey, you're scanning more than 40 terabytes or more than 60 terabytes of data. You need to tone it down. There are data sets out there that are larger than 100 or 1,000 terabytes. I mean, it's you think about the number of transactions that goes through a company like Walmart on a daily basis, and you aggregate that over, the store network, the e-commerce network, the supply chain network. It's tremendous, actually.
right? And so, listening to John, audience, you begin to understand why we have to think carefully about how we write a query so that as we're pulling data, inquiring about data with a database, we don't cost our company, a few $100,000 or something, right? While it's churning away.
Yep.
All right. Well, this is great. So what else would you like to say to people who are interested in data work and thinking about, possibly engaging in a degree like this?
Yeah, I would say that we're just at the early innings of what analytics is about and what it can do. And so there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. I would say that the caveat, though, is that if you're going to do this as a career, you should commit to continuous learning. There's really no shortcuts to do this. Finding good mentors, continuously reading, getting hands-on and practicing is really the only way to do it. But what's really cool, and I think I'm a testament to this, is if you do stay the course, there are rewards at the end of all of that work. So it's definitely worth the lift. The number of jobs, the quality of work is improving on a regular basis, maybe quarterly or yearly. You can definitely see the improvements. But you have to stay the course. You have to continue learning, continue asking questions and being curious. There's no way around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things about a program like this, as I'm finding, is sometimes if a person's going to pivot to this field, or if they're coming up through their education, we're able to build a curriculum where they are asked to do a lot of self-learning, but we're able to do it in community, right? And so give each other feedback. You and I can respond to our students and help them along, right? We create these conversations. And the fun thing about today is we're enhancing our curriculum so that those who are local can come join local in-person meetings, and those who are purely online can join online meetings, right? And we get to add this dialogical component to it so that you don't have to start out on your own, right?
Yep.
But then after that point, you can continue driving your own learning. And so, but I think you're right. And that sort of marks the difference between somebody who succeeds and who doesn't, right? Somebody who's willing to continue that learning process.
Yeah. I would also say that, as you're doing this, you still have to learn how to sell your skills. And so being able to articulate what it is you're capable of is half of the battle. You do have to learn, but you also have to be able to articulate the value you bring. And so going through the curriculum that David has put together really helps bring that language, bring the key ideas, and bring the key technologies forward. And like we said, it's industry ready. David, if I can just kind of put a little pitch in for Newman, they're going out into the community, bringing business leaders into the conversation as partners and helping to teach the future workforce to use those tools and to understand the concepts correctly, so that a lot of that learning foundation, that educational foundation is there, so they don't have to do quite so much learning on their own. They're set on a path to success to continue learning and to continue growing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, John, this has been fantastic. Let's do it again. Plenty of topics we could choose in the future, but thanks for helping me talk about these topics today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, David.
Thanks a lot.